All right, guys, welcome to episode number 11 of the Limitless Mindset Podcast. And today we're going to do something that's just a little bit different and off the cuff today. So for those of you guys that can't see me, you're probably listening in today. I'm super casual. I'm not wearing the traditional black polo. I do got my flat bill hat on still and wearing some nice sweats. And Saturday morning and just here. And I had an idea I wanted to do for you guys. I'd put a post up a couple weeks back asking for some things that maybe you guys wanted to hear about. Obviously, I'm always trying to drop some value and some advice to you guys. But I put a question out, a poll out, and I got a lot of really good responses on some things that you guys were curious about. So I figured I would take today to answer some of these questions for you guys and give you guys a little bit of an insight on what my journey's been like, what that looks like, kind of some of the things that led me to be who I am today, some of the lessons I learned, some of the good things, some of the bad things. Again, lessons were learned in all of it. So today, I'm actually kind of excited. I think it's fun to hear about this kind of stuff. I know when I look at other successful people, I always try to not necessarily look at where they're at today, but look at what led them to where they're at today, because I think that success leaves clues. So hopefully some of what I talk about today will resonate with some of you guys. Hopefully some of you guys may be able to relate to it. And hopefully today, some of this will plant some seeds for you guys. That would be my goal, to maybe make some changes in your life or know that you have the ability to change at any point that you want to, because that's one thing that I have learned very quickly now at this age, but took me a long time to learn when I was younger. So let's jump right into it. So one of the questions I got, the first one was that I want to hear about your youth. What you experienced growing up as a child with nothing. So let me just jump right into that. Going back to when I was a kid, I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have 4 siblings. I have an older brother who is much older than I am now. He's a half brother from my dad's previous marriage before I was around. And then I have a younger sister who's about a year younger than I am. She lives here in Arizona with us now. She is actually a teacher. And then I had a younger brother who passed away when I was 7 and he was 4. So it was myself, my sister, and my younger brother. We all lived together. And so long story short, basically we'll just start right at the front end of this and what led us to come to Arizona and where we're at today. My dad, growing up, we didn't really have a whole lot of money. I remember growing up in Las Vegas. We grew up on the east side of Vegas, Hollywood, Bonanza Boulevard area. For those of you guys that are familiar with Las Vegas, it was a nice side of town at that point, but we had the smallest house in the neighborhood. I mean, we were surrounded by super nice houses, and we just had this little trailer. I don't even know how we ended up there, but we did. So it was kind of cool to be where we were. And I remember being a kid and just walking around these neighborhoods. William Shatner actually used to live up by us, kind of, and just always really nice houses. We would just walk down the streets. I remember being a kid and just seeing these massive houses, and I always wondered what these people did. And we had this little tiny house and stuff. And anyway, so one day my dad was coming home from work, and he was backing. He had a pickup truck. My dad owned a concrete business. He was a DJ in Las Vegas, basically. And so he kind of just did a bunch of little side hustles. He never really made a lot of money. We didn't have a whole lot growing up, but the bills were paid. I had a good childhood. My parents were always around. Super encouraging for me as a kid. I still remember the first time my dad taught me how to ride a bike in front of that house. And so he was backing up one day coming home from work, and we were, every day my brother and I would go and jump on the back of his pickup truck as he was backing his work truck in the yard at the end of the day. And one day, my brother's foot basically slipped on this bumper, and he flew forward, and his eyeball hitch had actually hit the trailer ball. And I remember he had gone underneath my dad's truck, and I jumped off. My dad didn't realize it. I was just beating on his door, letting him know, hey, my little brother's name was Cody at the time. He was underneath the truck. And so, my dad stops, picks my brother up, throws me and my sister outside of the house, and doesn't let us in the house. And I remember Flight for Life coming and picking my brother up. And I was 7 at this time, and he was 4, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. It's one of those kind of crazy things you don't really ever forget. So he, at that point, basically, he was pronounced dead, basically. He didn't make it, and it put my dad into basically this massive depression. So my dad just kind of stopped working at that time. I remember there was probably about a good month or so. I don't think we really saw him too much. He was just stayed in his bedroom, and kind of just it was just a really kind of dark time for our family. So my mom ended up coming out to Arizona to help, somebody that was running for like campaigning back in like the mid 90s here in Arizona. She had some experience doing like campaign and political type work, helping people do that kind of stuff. And so I remember my dad had moved us from that house into another rental property. We lost that house to foreclosure just because he obviously stopped working for a while after my brother had passed away. And so, I just remember we went to this house and we were only there for probably 6 months to maybe a year, I think, till I was about 8. And I just remember my dad one day we were done. I don't think he even told my mom from what I can remember. We just got a U-Haul that went to our house and he loaded everything up into this U-Haul that would fit 2 cars, and then he sold everything else. He put it out in the driveway. I think we got like $500 or $1,000 and we ended up in Arizona. And I remember we showed up where this gentleman that was working here in Arizona running for, it was like some political position. And I don't think he really told my mom we were coming down here. And we showed up in a U-Haul truck and he just said, this is it. We're going to, stay in Arizona. And luckily that guy had let us live in his office building for about a month or so until my dad was able to get a job here in Arizona. And he was able to, basically get us a place to live. So kind of fast forward, this is when I was 9, when I moved to Arizona after this. This was about a 2-year process that all this had taken place. So I landed in Arizona in 96, I believe we came out here. And then my dad ended up getting a job doing underground construction, utilities, and dirt work. We got a rental property over in South Phoenix, and that was not good. We didn't know the area that well at the time, and we had a couple cars get stolen within the 6-month window that we lived in South Phoenix. And then my parents learned very quickly that was not the place to be, and they were able to find a rental property out in Maricopa, Arizona. And this was, like I said, about 97 time frame. I would have been in 8th grade, I think, at that time. So we ended up in Maricopa. My dad was able to kind of buy a little trailer, a little kind of like single wide trailer, 3-bed, 2-bath, probably wasn't more than about 900 to 1,000 square foot, but it was on 3 acres. It had some property, extremely rural, extremely different than what I'd ever experienced growing up in Las Vegas, where it was kind of like, fast-paced neighborhoods. My dad was DJing at night and stuff when I was a kid, so now we went from that to like an extremely rural environment. My middle school, elementary school, high school, all that was on one property at one time. We were a 2A high school at the time I went out there. And so I remember growing up, we just didn't have a whole lot of money. That was the thing. I remember being a kid and my dad basically, they always provided for us. We always had food. We just didn't have much, but we never were starving either. But I always remember asking for things. I wanted nice, shoes. I wanted a pair of Nikes. I wanted clothes. I wanted if I wanted a new bike or anything like that, the common theme was always, we don't have money. We don't have money. Can't afford it. I remember hearing that so much growing up. So I went and got my first job at 12 years old. I found a glider ride place that's still out there in Maricopa right now. It's called Arizona Soaring off of Highway 238 out there, if you guys have ever driven by it. For those of you guys that follow me on social media, you guys probably saw I took our entire brokerage out there actually to go for glider rides about a month and a half, 2 months ago. That was my first job. 12 years old. I used to ride the school bus after school. They dropped me off at that place and I'd wash airplanes after work. And then weekends, Saturday, Sunday, same thing, washed airplanes. Summer, I did it for $2 an hour. And that was my first job. And the reason I got that job was only just to have nice clothes, because we didn't have nice things growing up. I remember seeing the kids at school having decent stuff and had friends that had, nice dirt bikes and stuff like that. And just, that was really, to me, the only way. I remember my dad saying we just couldn't afford it. And it's like, okay, and then I'll just try to make some money and buy these things myself. So that was the first job that I had ever gotten, was at 12 years old. And I worked there until I was about 16 years old washing airplanes. Now, that job was probably one of the most pivotal jobs I had because, like I said, I got paid $2 an hour at that. But I learned a lot of lessons in that job, and the fact that, it was a customer service-based job. You showed up, you put in the work. I was a young kid. I was a jackass. I probably didn't deserve that job at 12. They put up with me being undisciplined. But what they did do was they taught me, if you treat people well, the customer service side of it, you're going to get, you have the potential to earn a decent living making good tips. I made $5, $6, $7 a tip, if I'd go wash somebody's airplane while they were out there flying in and out. And that's what I did until I was 16 years old. I got a driver's license. And then from there, I went and worked after school out in the melon fields, worked at a company called Santa Rosa Cooling out there, driving forklifts. Had a job doing welding out there. So a lot of my jobs were, very labor intensive based. Got a job doing heavy equipment and construction after I graduated high school, doing dirt work, digging ditches. And then I had a job also working on that weekend. So I'd work Monday through Thursday doing construction. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would work out at a giant warehouse distribution, like a food center distribution. So I was working 7 days a week by the time I was 18 years old. And I didn't go right into college. And again, it was just that thing of, I saw as being a kid, the downfall of just not making good money and just kind of the strain it put on my family. It was always a topic of discussions and arguments and, just the lack of a lot of things growing up. So for me, going right into it, I was extremely determined to get myself out of that really quickly. And the only way I knew how to do that was to work. So yeah, did that, and then I ended up just getting lucky. Had a young girl I went to school with in high school, offered me a position basically at my first sales role, which was a big college there in Phoenix. And so got that job, and that was my introduction to school. Went to college, got a college degree there, got my bachelor's in business management, made great money, and that was my introduction into sales. So going back to my childhood though, the thing I want to tell you guys about it and what made me who I am today with that is it instilled such a belief of you just get your ass up and you go to work every day. That's the only thing. It's the only opportunity. My dad was an extremely hard worker, worked his ass off when I was a kid. He always did work. He provided for us. Looking back at it though, I learned very quickly, and I didn't probably realize this till my mid-20s, because I always looked at people that were successful and I said, man, my dad works as hard as those people. Why doesn't he make good money, right? You can't ever really cross the T's and dot the I's with this kind of stuff. So you learn pretty quickly now, and at least I know looking back on that if I had to go back and do it all over again, I wish I probably would have been surrounded by people that knew how to make a decent living and were better with money growing up. Because I think, and this is why I'm so passionate about trying to help people these days, is I think that growing up, you're going to become the product of your environment, right? And it's just usually the odds for most people. If you are surrounded by people that work hard and extremely hard workers, as I'm sure a lot of you guys probably come from maybe a similar background, your parents busted their butt, right? Sun up to sundown, just like how my dad did, but they never really were able to make a great living for themselves. They were never actually able to get ahead. They were never actually able to create wealth. And I think it's because it was generational patterns. My family does not come from money. I don't have a whole lot of people in my family that made a good living for themselves. I don't have a whole lot of people in my family that run businesses. They've always just done the traditional path of working, basically. For a company, just making a living, collecting a paycheck. And I just figured out at a very young age that just was not going to be my destiny. I just decided I didn't want that, to be honest with you. What's interesting about this is my sister and I actually took extremely different paths, and we come from the same environment, but that environment morphed us into being two completely different people. I have an extremely entrepreneurial spirit. I'm extremely financially driven. I'll be 100% honest with you guys, because to me, making a bunch of money in higher finances provides more resources, options, and tools to help others and scale and grow. My sister took the opposite route. My sister took the extremely safe route. My sister, because of that instability when we were younger, definitely leans a little more on she loves the stable route. She's the one that's going to drive the same car for 10 years, live in the same house for 10 to 20 years. Like, she takes the very stable. She does not like change. She does not like taking risk. But what's interesting is I do, and I'm exactly the opposite of that because of that. So it's all in your perspective, right? We both come from an environment that bred two of us to see things very differently, and we took two very different paths in life. And even today as adults, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of the ways that we approach life and the way that we handle things and the way that we see it's the best thing. So, I think ultimately it's going to come down to you just got to decide what kind of life you want to live. There's no right or wrong answer, but you are a product of your environment and circumstances, and it's up to you to change that. The next question I got that ties into that, what did you do to make the change between where you are now in life and would you do it again? So for me, it probably didn't click until I was about 25. And I just had this thought, I'd worked for so many companies doing okay, making good money. And then whenever a company would have a downturn, whenever things got a little tough, companies would have to let people go. It just was one of those things. There wasn't opportunities, and I just start to figure out real quickly that if I had to summarize it, just nobody's coming to save you, right? That's for me. I realized that if I was going to make a change, it was going to come down to I had to make the change. I had to take control. Everything was in my hands. I got put in a couple really uncomfortable situations, losing jobs with companies or companies shutting down or just things along the path that I kind of knew. I started to realize like in my early 20s, but it took about when I was about 25, 26 range. Had already had 2 kids and had a third one on the way. And basically that job I had in the sales, I lost that job that was paying me really good. And I just kind of found myself sitting there saying, okay, I'm done. I'm done working for people. I'm done I'm not going to ever put myself in this position ever again. I got 2 kids. I got another one on the way. And I don't want to be, I just don't want to be in a situation where my livelihood depends on other people anymore. Because no matter how hard I work for them, no matter how good I do for them, it doesn't mean that I'm going to have job security. And everybody right now, I guarantee you yourself, if you think you're working for a company and you have job security, I'm going to tell you that you don't. Because eventually one day they could sell that company, markets can change, things can shift, and if you don't trust yourself and if you don't rely on yourself to earn a living, things can change very quickly. And I learned that, like I said, in my mid-20s, and that right there was a tipping point for me. I actually went when I lost that job and had 2 jobs. Actually, I take that back, 3 jobs. I had started one of my other companies at that time, put myself in debt, got my credit cards out, bought a bunch of different products and started selling stuff online. Got a CDL. I was actually driving semi-trucks, delivering food in the evening, and then during the day, I was working for another company, running their dialer and automation system for an entire call center, taking some of the experience I had from the previous job. So I was working 3 jobs just to save up enough money until my personal business that I had started was able to bankroll itself enough to provide a living for myself to quit. And so for me, that's where the change was. That's where that is like my mid-20s, about 22 range is when it started, and 25 is when I made the decision I was done. I was done working for people, and I was going to start building for myself. Is when that really kicked in. So, what were your friends like then, and what are they like now? This is a pretty good question, to be honest with you, because I have had friends from one side of the spectrum that come from the exact same environment I have that had pretty much nothing, and to this day they still have nothing. And I have friends that are on the other side of the spectrum that are multimillionaires that basically just have like everything that I would probably aspire to be. And I can tell you guys, I've sat back and I look at it, and there's things to take from every friendship and every relationship. But it's interesting because to get where I am today, it wouldn't be without those friendships of the people that were higher up to pull me up, right? So I believe that, if you want to get anywhere in life, you probably need to be surrounded by people that are doing exactly what it is you want to do. Case in point, right? Going back to how things were when I was a kid, my parents didn't understand financial literacy. They were hard workers. They worked. They always got up and went to work, and provided, but they didn't understand how to take $1 and turn it into 3. They didn't understand leverage. They didn't understand cheap interest rates. They didn't understand, how to utilize this business and then bankroll the capital to start it. They just didn't understand any of that, right? It's like a truck going in the mud, right? You're just spinning your wheels, but you're not going anywhere. And that's what it is. It's almost like a rat race. And then as I started hanging out with and intentionally putting myself around people that do better than me, right? Because that's at the end of the day, if you think about it, if there's somebody out there doing better than you, it's because they probably most likely know more than you do, right? Or they've experienced more than you do. And I think a lot of people look at other successful people, and this is where the whole, jealousy and hate thing comes from. And, we see it online every day, right? Somebody posts something nice. It's the same thing with me. When I bought my Lamborghini, you guys probably saw I posted that up, and, you get half of the people that were like, oh, it's friggin' awesome. That's cool. And you got another people just talking shit, right? And so it's interesting because one thing so many people can see from so many different ways. So with me, I started to identify with these people that were making more money than me, because when I grew up, I was taught, unfortunately, that people that make good money are scam artists. They rip people off. They're not good. The only reason they got there is because they were screwing other people, And so I had this deep-rooted I had this tension going on inside, right? Like I knew I wanted that, but on the flip side, I didn't want to be a bad person and get those things. I didn't want to see that. So that kind of was like a tough dichotomy as I was a kid. But in my mid-20s, when I went to start a business, I just realized like, hey, I need to be around these guys. I need to learn from them. They have something to teach me. They're where I want to be, basically. And so, just looking back at it now, I wish I would have started that younger, and I wish I had that mindset, because my friends now that I hang out with that do very well for themselves are the opposite of what anybody's ever told that they are, right? They're probably some of the most generous people I have. They're some of the people that just give back without ever even acknowledging, like they donate so much money to other people. They help other families, and you would never know, but they don't even say anything about it most of the time, right? Which goes contrary to belief of what many people think. Anytime I've asked them for help, I've reached out and said, hey, I need help with this. Like, can you offer me advice? Can you help me out? And they're like the most generous people. Where I've had friends on the opposite side of that spectrum when I was younger that they never really got that mindset, right? They always kind of had that, I'm going to call it like the crab in the bucket mindset. As you're trying to uplift yourself and you're trying to pull out, you have those friends that are, saying, why the hell would you do that? Why would you want to work from yourself? This is way better to stay with this steady company that pays you a base salary because they got a retirement 20 years down the road. Why would you ever want to work for yourself? That doesn't make any sense. Why are you working so much? Why are you working 7 days a week? Why are you working on the weekends? Oh, we're going out of town out here to the dunes. You should take all this time off and go with us, right? I had all of that. I had all those people in my ear telling me these things. And then when I'd say no, and I'd tell them, hey, I'm working, towards this, and I got this project going on, or I'm working towards this goal, or I got to go out and help my clients today instead of going out, I'd get heat for that. These people would just talk shit about stuff like that. And I learned very quickly then, I started noticing, well, wait a minute, the people that are doing better than I am, that I seek advice and mentorship from, they get it. They understand. They're encouraging me, right? Hey, yeah, we get it. We know why you're working. I am too. I understand. This is how you can leverage your time a little better. Like, just the level on that end of the spectrum was so much more quality for me as a friend, right? I gravitate towards them. If I'm ever in a pinch and the first thing that goes to mind, like, who should I call? It's going to be those people, right? So, to answer this question, I guess in summary, what were your friends like then? Where are they now? I tend to hang around people that are doing what I want to do, right? I still have some friends from when I was much younger that we're still friends with. But ultimately, it's hard to relate to those people, right? The conversations aren't the same. If you're sitting at a dinner table and you guys are having a discussion, when you're trying to talk about all the cool things you're working towards, in some ways, to some people, that's going to come across as bragging, unfortunately. They're going to think you're just there to brag on them. They're not going to be able to look at that and say, oh, that's awesome, that's a success, or offer advice of like, hey, I'm glad that's working for you. By the way, expect this, try this. This is coming down the pipeline for you. This is going to be a bottleneck you're going to run into. Those are the conversations I love to have when I hang around my friends. I always try to give value and add value. And ultimately these days, if I'm not around somebody that's giving me value, offering me tips, advice, or teaching me something, or I'm not around people that I'm giving value to and they're listening, I probably won't hang around those people. There's just not room for them in my circle these days. So hopefully that answers that question for you guys. The next question was, when will you think you'll be happy with the results? And to answer your question, the answer is right now. I'm very, very happy with the results that I've achieved so far. But on the other side of that, I'm always going to stay hungry. I'm not even close to where I think I can possibly go. If you would have asked me, 10 years ago, if I would ever be, what my goals were, I would have told you that my goals 10 years ago were half of what I have right now, right? My goals 10 years ago, I saw a Facebook post pop up. One of my memories from about 7 or 8 years ago, before I even got into real estate or anything. It's like, I'd be so happy if I could just make $100,000 a year. And I remember like in my head thinking right at that time that was going to be like the end all be all. And now I laugh. I'm like, man, if I only made just that, if I stopped at that, I would not be progressing any further, right? If I had hit that benchmark and just stopped and said, okay, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm done, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be in the position I am to help other people. I wouldn't have started the other companies that I have now and have other people working for me, and I wouldn't be coaching and training them. None of what I have today would even exist had I stopped at initially what I thought I wanted. So to answer that question, I can't tell you if I'll ever necessarily be happy, but I'm not unhappy either. I'm very content with some of the results I've seen. What's important to me is that my field goal every year is always moving, right? So as I set a goal for myself and I reach it, I need that next goal. And I love always pushing, I love progressing, I love growing. The day that I stay the same at the end of the year where my goals haven't moved and I stay the same and I just say I'm content, I honestly think I'll probably not be happy. That'll be the point of incontent for me. So learn to love the process. I know that that's one thing that I've done basically is I've learned to go through the motions of growth. I've learned to, be stretched to the maximum and then see the growth in that. And so that's one piece of advice I could offer you guys as well too, is just don't ever settle. Don't think that there's going to be an end destination. If you ever tie yourself like, hey, if I could just get that car, I'm going to be happy. If I could just get that house, I'm going to be happy. If I could just make this much money per year, I'm going to be happy. I can tell you, you're not going to be happy. You're going to hit that. You're going to get a temporary hit of happiness. You're going to get a temporary hit of joy. And then eventually that joy is going to wear off. That field goal is always moving. So what I can tell you, and one thing that's helped me and one thing I work on is always taking some time to stand back and be happy for what you have and reflect on that. I've hit a lot of goals. I've hit a lot of really cool things. I've met a ton of cool people. But also, I know that I have way more in the gas tank and there's so many more things that I'm working for. So I don't think that I'm ever going to be done, if that makes sense. I like growth. It's what drives me. I like moving the needle. I like every year doing something different. I like seeing other people win. So there probably will never be an end for me, to be honest with you. And the why. What is your why and what is it that you're after? Honestly, the why for this is just to change the trajectory of my family tree, to be honest with you. Like I said, it's looking back at my family tree, there's never been that one person that's done very, very well. My grandma does pretty well. She's self-employed. She owns her own restaurant. She's always been an entrepreneur, but growing up, I didn't really know her. My early childhood was not around her, so I didn't get to see that. I wouldn't say that was necessarily like a pivotal moment for me or like a role model per se, because I didn't really get to establish a relationship with her until I was probably in my early 20s, to be honest with you. My mom had been adopted, and we didn't reconnect with my grandma until later on when I was a little older. My real grandma had passed away from like brain cancer, and she's the one that had raised me when I was younger. So I didn't really see, she's probably the only most other successful person within my family tree. And again, I didn't really get to know her until I was late into my 20s. So for me, why I'm doing all this is I want to push my kids so far off the path that our family tree has always been on and provide so many opportunities for them that after I'm gone, they have something to run with, basically. They have more opportunities than I have. I want to show them that there's different ways to, make a living out there. I want to show them there's different ways to make a difference out there. I want to show them different opportunities. So for me, I'm trying to push things so far for myself that at the end of the day, when they get handed over everything that I've built, it just completely changes their direction and path of life. I don't want them to really have to go through a lot of the struggles that I had to go through when I was a kid. I think that all those struggles were completely necessary. I think there was a ton of great lessons in that. But again, ultimately I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this to create generational wealth for them and basically try to get them out of the rat race that my family was in for so many generations before me, and to just offer them, like I said, basically something different. I don't want them to have to, go through all the things that I basically had to go through. So that I would say that's my why, honestly. Another question I got: when you were early in business and grinding to make ends meet, working multiple jobs, always worrying about how the next bill was going to get paid, did you always know, even back then, that you were going to be who you are today? Yeah, honestly, I didn't know what it looked like. I knew at some point, like when I was in my early 20s to mid 20s, that I was going to be successful at something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have an exactly clear direction. If you would have asked me, I would have, taken a path into real estate. I probably would have said no at that time. It wasn't really something that was on my radar. What led me into real estate, honestly, was not the fact that I wanted to buy and sell houses, but it was more for me of just investing into rental properties. That to me, as I kind of paid attention to people that have, a lot of wealth, a lot of people that have a lot of passive income, it always tied back to almost always real estate, right? It always tied back to, we got, rental properties, we got doors, we got passive income, we got investments. And I just started noticing these trends over and over as I was kind of studying this stuff. And so I said, okay, I think I need to be in real estate, right? If like it's tried and true. Like, why do I need to reinvent the wheel? Obviously, so many people are investing in this. So many people, are parking money in real estate and leveraging it. Like, there's something here. I need to look into that. So that's, again, I didn't get into it with the intention of buying and selling to the level that I do, of being a top producer, of owning my own brokerage. That was not even in my radar at the point. But I did know I was going to be something. I did know I was going to make passive income. I didn't know when. I didn't know what it was. But I always had a wavering belief that was going to happen in myself. I trusted myself enough to make that happen. For me, it was just enough of, you're persistent enough. I knew if I kept trying, if I kept pushing into it, if I kept chasing that down, if I kept that goal in front of me, eventually it would hit, and it did. So second part of that question was, if you could call the Blake that was working multiple jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, and tell him one piece of advice from the eyes of who you are now, what would you say to him? And honestly, that's a really good question. And I would say, just take the jump. Because I know for me, that was the biggest fear. If I had to say, there's like, what was that like line, right? Was what always held me back was a steady paycheck, right? It's like, no, I got kids, I got bills, I got a mortgage payment, I got all these things that are tying me to a job. And it was that fear, right? The fear of failing. What if I quit this job and I can't pay my bills? What if I let my kids down? What if I let my family down? It's just so much safer to keep this job and keep these steady paychecks and just going to work for somebody. It's just so much safer for me, right? But then the bigger belief in that was, but it's not the answer. It's not going to get me where I want to go. If I want to, invest in all these things, I want to create wealth, I want to work for myself, I know that is going to have to change at some point. And the longer I let that go on in my life, the more time I was burning, basically. So my one piece of advice would be is just, if you know you need to do something, if it's in your mind, if it's in your heart, if it's a goal of yours that you want to pursue, and it's something that you really want to go after, just do it. Like, I don't know any other way to say it. I've seen it repeated over and over and over again. I've got, a handful of agents here that work for me that I have this conversation with that start off working for a job with me. And they say, it's just, I got to quit. Like, I don't like my job. I don't like going into work. I'm not inspired by it every day. It doesn't drive me. I'm not excited about it. I don't wake up, feet hit the floor, like excited about doing this. And when I talk to them about what excites them, they talk about, being their own boss, working for themselves, which, by the way, is very fucking hard. So don't think it's easy. But that's what they want to do. That's fulfilling. And the conversation is always, why aren't you doing it? And the other conversation goes back to, well, I need a steady paycheck. I need this. And it's always that one thing that's anchoring them back. And then when they're finally able to pull that rug out from underneath them, and they have a full belief in themselves that no matter what, they're going to make it. They're going to put in as much work. They're going to grind as hard as they need to make that work for themselves. They're not going to give up. And then they trust me to help them, right? Like, they're coming to me for coaching, they're coming to guidance, and I tell them, if you show up and you put in the work, I'll help you be successful. It's all you have to do. If you don't put in the work, you're not going to be successful. And they listen to me, they do it. So I've seen this replicated time and time and time again. For those that put in the work and believe in themselves, it's totally possible. So that would probably be my one piece of advice. If you know you need to make a jump, if you know you want to, just make the jump. Stop delaying. Too many people delay, too many people wait, and before you know it, they run out of time, and then they don't have the time to make the choice they want to make anyways. So another question is, we often hear success is 80% mindset, 20% strategy. Do you agree with this? If so, what has helped you break through the glass ceilings that people make for themselves? Performance coaches, vision boards, writing down your goals daily. This is a great question, and I fully believe that it is 80% mindset and 20% strategy. I can tell you I've tried so many different things and failed at them, but I can also tell you that my mindset has allowed me to just, tackle anything without a true fear. Like, for me, it's just easy now, right? It's like repetition. Like, the first time I quit my job, I remember pulled that steady paycheck out from underneath me. I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I don't have a steady paycheck. Like, man, next Friday, it's going to be really weird not having that direct deposit into my bank account, with that paycheck. Like, what do I do? And I remember being so freaked out by it. And then now I just look back and I kind of laugh, because you create so much opportunity when you remove that safety net out from underneath you. But again, it goes back to my mindset with it, right? I'm an optimist. I see the positive in everything. I see the potential opportunity in everything. I believe in taking chances on things now, where I think that if I had a negative mindset and all I did was looked at all the negative, if I constantly looked at every potential opportunity and my thought process went to, okay, what's the downside? What am I going to fail at? Why is this not going to work? Like, if you're looking for all the reasons that something's not going to work, you're going to immediately talk yourself out of it, 100%. If you are that person that looks at an opportunity and says, okay, on paper, this thing pencils out. It could totally work. I just need to put in the effort, or I need to put in the work. And, could it fail still? Sure, but the odds are in my favor if I just put in the damn work. Guess what? You're going to take that opportunity, and your odds of now being successful are 100% over your odds of just talking yourself out of it and not trying at all, right? So to me, I know this just goes back to the whole cliche things, right? Talent is always going to, be second best to hustle, is just what it comes down to. I know people that are not that intelligent, and I mean that in the kindest way, right? When I mean intelligent, like they don't have a high IQ. Some of them can hardly spell, to be honest with you. Their grammar is all messed up, but they are like extremely wealthy because they have a positive mindset and they just put in the work and they put in the hustle. I know people on the flip side of that are extremely knowledgeable, extremely talented, but because they second guess everything they do, because they overanalyze everything they do, because they are constantly looking at every situation as a risk and a downside instead of seeing the opportunity in it, they never take action, and they're just stuck in these like mediocre places in life, right? And then they try to talk themselves into it like it's something great, like, well, I got a good job, I got a steady paycheck, and it's what I want, and I like the simple. And I call bullshit, to be honest with you, because a lot of those people, I guarantee if you ask them, what would you rather be doing? What would you love to be doing? Not a whole lot of people that work for another business or work for another company or are not self-employed and are just going to punch the clock every day. Not a lot of people say that they absolutely love what they do. You might work for a great company, you might work for a great boss, you might be very content with that. But I guarantee you, if you gave people the opportunity, you said, what is it you want to do? Like, what is your dream job? What is it that what does your perfect life look like? I would say easily 90% of those people aren't doing what it is that they really want to be doing. They've just talked themselves out of chasing those goals and those dreams. And the ones that ultimately, if you sit down and you look at any successful person, you can read, and this is documented throughout so many history books, every successful person was extremely perseverant and had an optimistic mindset. Not a lot of people right out the gate, if you read in history and look at people that were successful, won at the very first thing they tried, right? So many people failed at so many different things, but they were extremely persistent in what they did and had an optimistic personality that one day one of these ideas was going to stick and they were going to scale it. And that's how they turned into successes, right? It's not an overnight success thing. Most everybody has that, 20-year, 10-year overnight success story, right? What you see today took many years and many failures for those people to get there. So I would agree with you. What helps me with that, honestly, is, I'm always seeking opportunity now. I've learned to master one thing, I focus on it, I enjoy it, and then I find another opportunity to chase, basically. After I've mastered one, I move on to the next one. And I'm always looking to just try different things. That's what keeps me going. If I don't have the knowledge or the idea, I seek out somebody that does have the knowledge that I need. They've been where I want to go. They're there already because I know that they know the blueprint. They know the path to get there. And I ask them, can you help me? Can you coach me? I'm not going to waste your time. I promise you, if you give me this information and you help me, I will put it into action. I will do something with it. And I do. And guess what? A lot of the times it works out just fine for myself, but I've gotten to that point where I had to train myself to be that way. So that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully today was helpful. I really enjoyed these kind of questions, to be honest with you guys. These things are fun to me, and hopefully it adds a little bit of value to you guys as well too. Hopefully it gives you guys a little insight on my background and kind of where I come from and how I got to where I am today. It wasn't an overnight success. Like I said, it took me a long time to really gain some traction to get to where I want to be. And so my advice to you guys is do the same, right? We all got struggles. We all go after things we want to. And a lot of people talk themselves out of going after the big goals, the big things that they want to do, and they settle for mediocrity. And I can tell you, as someone who kind of was able to break through that ceiling and get to the other level, it's extremely rewarding. It's going to be very hard, a lot of late nights, a lot of grinding for you guys, a lot of risk taking. You're going to lose money, you're going to lose time, but as long as you're okay with that and you understand that, the juice is worth the squeeze. So as always, guys, hopefully you get out there and crush it. Let's get after it.